Hey guys, Lloyd with Sawdust and Splinters here. I've been asked recently about a shop tour video, so I thought I would go ahead and do one of those. I hope it's not too much of a disappointment. This is a side business for me, so it's all done in the garage. But I think we get a lot done in a little bit of space that we have. So take a look. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. All right, starting on this side of the shop, I've got my lumber rack that I got from the woodwhisperer.com. And kind of modified to fit inside of my shop. So you got kind of a torsion built shelf piece here, and then a cart that kind of pivots out from the back to allow you to load in the sheet goods. I bolted these 5-gallon buckets to the bottom here to keep all the shorts. Here I've got my rigid spindle oscillating belt sander, which I think is a really good tool. I use this thing a lot, and for the money I don't think there's anything better in this class of tool. You got to spend a whole lot more money in it to get a much bigger tool. It takes up a lot more space to do what this little guy can do. Starting here is the first piece of woodworking equipment that I got, which was my shop smith that I picked up at a yard sale for $100. I taught myself how to do wood turning on this guy, and now he's relegated to drill press and bandsaw duty until I can afford to get my own individual components here. Here's my Festool station. So I've got the CT36 and an MFT, and as far as Festools go, I have the TS55, the ETS155 sander, the Carvex jigsaw, and a regular domino. And these are my favorite tools. I can't say enough good stuff about Festool and everything that they bring to the table, especially someone like me in a small area. It allows me to go out and work in the driveway when I have bigger pieces to work with and break them down and bring them into the shop to work on them. From a storage standpoint, I've got a couple of toolboxes. I use this toolbox just to store. I do also a lot of auto work, so I store my auto tools in here, and also some of the smaller stuff like marking and measuring tools. I've got one of these Delta triangular shaped dust collectors that I picked up at a yard sale. Actually, no, I picked it up off Craigslist. I got two of these guys for $50. One didn't work and the other one did. Turns out it was just a switch issue. Fixed the wiring in it and sold the other one. So basically I got this for free. Just some more storage area. I built some storage for pen blanks for turning, and also some storage area for the safety, I call it safety gear and consumables. I also store a lot of safety gear in this recycled bread box, so you can pick those up at yard sales pretty cheap. They make a decent little portable storage. Here's my dust collector. It's a Delta 650 CFM with the 1 micron bag, and I'm very happy with this guy. I plan on putting the NIDA Cyclone on it at some point. There's a modification guys have done where they put some tubes, extension tubes on this frame to lift it up to fit the Cyclone underneath it, and I think it works pretty good for what I'm doing. Right now I just manually move the hose between tools, which is pretty much just my table saw and my planer. When I start on the other half of the shop, I do have one of these Harbor Freight tool carts that I had a long time ago to store all my tools in, but I outgrew it. So now I use it to store materials and parts from my laser, and we'll talk about him in just a little bit. This is the second lathe that I ever bought, which is my Jet 1012. And I still use him a good bit for pin turning and smaller turnings. When I get set up in production mode, I'll usually use my bigger lathe to drill the blanks, and then use this guy to actually turn the pin pieces. Table saw wise, I've got a rigid 4512, and then I've kind of custom made and taken an old Craftsman router table that I had and mounted it into the extension. Turned it into sort of an extension and flush mounted it with the saw here. My first table saw was a rigid 4510, and then I traded it, or got rid of it, and got the 4512. One of the nice things about where I live is that TTI, which is the company that makes all the rigid and Ryobi tools for Home Depot, has a warehouse very close by, and 3 times a year they have employee sales where they sell these tools at ridiculously discounted prices from what you can buy them for in the store. So I think I paid $250 for this saw. It was remanufactured, but again, I see that as a bonus. The remanufacturing is done here stateside at this facility. So any of the production type issues that these saws have in common have been fixed. And I think you actually get a better part by buying them remanufactured, not to mention the cheaper price. So again, I've been very happy with this guy. And only time I'll probably upgrade him would be getting a saw stop just to have that added insurance policy. Well, here's a little table that I had made a long time ago, and what I kind of found was that having tables and flat surfaces basically allow crap to stack on top of them. So early last year when I bought the laser, I had to free up some more space, so I elevated this cart so that I can stick my joiner underneath. That's a Delta JT360 6-inch joiner. I don't use it very often, but it's fairly compact and stays out of the way for the few times that I actually have to use it. Planer wise, I've got the Delta 835 planer. Yeah, it's a 3-bladed planer with the jack post style height adjustment. Very happy with this part. It's one of my most used. Actually, it was my first high dollar brand new woodworking purchase, and I've not second guessed having it since I started using it. Here's my Delta 1642 lathe, and this one's worked out pretty well for me too. I think it's a fairly decent compromise from the Powermatics. Only issue I've ever really had with this thing is the speed readout does not work occasionally, and haven't really been able to troubleshoot it. One of the shop upgrades that I had was I put this air conditioner unit in the side of the garage. Here in South Carolina, we can get up to about 105 degrees during the summer, and you can't woodwork in that kind of weather. So unfortunately, the rest of the garage is uninsulated, so he does run the entire day if I'm working on a Saturday, but if it's 105 degrees outside, it'll keep it about 85 inside, which is somewhat bearable. Here I've got my sharpening station. So I use a work sharp and an angle bench grinder. The bench grinder is only for really rough work, but I use the work sharp daily on both my chisels and turning tools. And with the bar attachment for the Tormek tools, I think it's pretty hard to beat the value that this tool has. With the flat grinding wheels, you don't get the hollows in your cutting tools like you would with a Tormek. So to me, I see this as the best system on the market. We'll come back to the laser. Here was the first woodworking project I did, which was my workbench. It's all made from big box store materials, 2x4s and 2x6s. It's a torsion box construction, so it's got a plywood top, so I'm not that worried about mucking it up. I've got the Wood River shoulder vise, and then I keep all my fist tools stored underneath here. Just some more storage for clamps and a little plane hanger, as I call it. Pretty much use Wood River planes. I've got the joiner and the number 4 and a bench plane. The rest of my planes I picked up, used and restored them. So I've got 2 Stanley number 5s. One's got a heavily cambered blade for really roughing out material, and then another one's got a flat blade. And then I do also have the Veritas large shoulder plane and a vintage Stanley 92, I believe, shoulder/rabbit plane. Just some other storage ideas that I had. I had this kind of movable panel that was a piece of one of those shop notes type furniture pieces that I'd made that I ended up not using very much. So I've got this guy kind of just mounted to some hinges to allow it to swing out of the way and allow me to squeeze into these tight areas. Here in my storage closet, I have one of the rigid 3-tank air compressors mounted. This is like a stairwell, a closet underneath a stairwell going up to my bonus room. I actually have a cart made that looks kind of like this big cart that can roll out, and so very long-term storage stuff I have on this cart that can be pulled out. But unfortunately, since the changes to the shop driven by the laser, it's such a pain to get in there that I honestly don't even know what's on the cart anymore. I have a lot of micro jig tools. I really respect those guys that micro jig and use their equipment. I think it's top notch. So I use their tapering jig and the various push blocks in all of my products. And then here was an old piece of furniture I reclaimed from the house to store wood on. Wood storage, again, I use my wood rack on the side wall over there. And then little shelves like this. I also use a lot of 5-gallon buckets and stick them in places that I don't use or don't have to clean very often. Shop's in a bit of a mess right now, but whose shop isn't, right? Okay, the last part of the shop and the biggest investment in the shop was my Rabbit USA RL6040 laser. So this is a 60-watt laser, and I use this to make patterns for routing, and the greatest majority of the work is done personalizing items that I make. So I can use this to engrave pins, and also it works in all kinds of materials. Wood, of course, it'll do ceramic, marble tile, anodized aluminum. It can do steels if you buy the thermal paint, which costs a ton. So I haven't done very much of that work. But the bed size is about 18 inches by 24 inches. And again, 60 watts of power, so that will cut through. I haven't personally tried anything thicker than 1/2 inch because of the lenses that I use. And the lenses here in the head will determine basically how thick you can cut through based on focal length. There's a lot of science that goes on. It's not as complicated as you might think, but a little bit more than can be talked about during this post here. So the laser is pretty much self-contained. The laser tube sits in the back, and this has been upgraded to the 60-watt tube. So it actually has this little bolt-on housing to accommodate the bigger tube. Then it also has its own chiller. I upgraded to the Freon-based water chiller, and there's also a mini air compressor behind there to blow the dust out of the kerf. And on the wall is its own 600 CFM blower, although I kind of highly doubt that this little motor can actually move 600 CFM. But anyhow, that's what it's rated. It does have an 8-inch port on it, so it's a huge hose. And that evacuates all the fumes out and then kicks them out through a vent in the side of the house that I put in to accommodate it. Just some more storage for the various sheet goods. The laser takes a lot of material storage area, so I basically crammed. When I get plywood in, I break it down into the size for the bed. It's not actually 18 by 24. I think the actual dimensions are 16.5 by 23.5. So 18 by 24 pre-cut stock won't fit in the bed. So I break it down and store it for usage as I get orders through the Etsy store. So there you have it, folks. There's the tour of the Sawdust and Splinters central operations. It's like I said, there's not a lot to it, but we get a lot done in this little space here. And again, if you got questions about anything, just shoot me a comment or an email, and we'll see if I can answer for you. Be on the lookout. We'll probably do some more in-depth analysis or talks about the laser, and because there's been a lot of upgrades and maintenance type things that is not very well documented and needs to be done, and I'm sure other users are probably having the same problems with those. So check back regularly, and we'll hopefully get some of these questions answered. Thanks, guys.